What area of history? Oh. The area of history is Putin history. Wow, remember when America had a strong leader? I almost forgot what it sounded like. Wow, what comments. Interview that goes down in history. Glorious. Well done from Greece, Mr. Tucker. You made bad guys seriously pissed off. American and Friends. Great interview. It is near impossible to get actual news in the US anymore. So many people benefit from this interview. Watching from Morocco, thank you, Tucker. The mainstream media can't hide the truth. Okay, let's go. Let's start. This is what a beginning. Oh boy, I'm excited for this. Okay, let's go. Yeah, and essentially it's such a great mindset.
An interview with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, shot February 6, 2024 at about 7 p.m. in the building behind us, which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview, as you will see if you watch it, is primarily about the war in progress, the war in Ukraine, how it started, what's happening, and most pressingly, how it might end. One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview,
One note before you watch. This video is going to be full of rambling and incoherent nonsense. But you're used to it because you watch me, so it's okay. It's not going to be anything out of the norm or out of the, my normal programming.
Interview, we asked the most obvious question, which is, why did you do this? Did you feel a threat, an imminent physical threat? And that's your job.
What? Why would you ask that? Did you feel a physical threat? Would you ask this to Hitler during World War II? Hey Hitler, why did you start World War II? Did you feel a threat? An imminent threat? Is that it? You felt threat? You felt the threat? That's not a loaded question at all. Truly. True journalism.
Justification. And the answer we got shocked us.
Shocked us to the core. So it all began in the 5th century.
Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia going back to the 8th century.
You know what? I'm gonna say it. As a big history fan, I dare say as a big history nerd, as a big history enthusiast, this whole channel is actually basically a history channel. My stream centers around history a lot. But if you have to, if you have to go to the 8th century to explain away a current conflict, we've got a problem. Okay? If you need to start rambling about the 8th century to explain why you invaded a country 2 years ago, then you might be full of shit. I'm just gonna put it out there.
And honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times. And he responded he was annoyed by the interruption. But we concluded in the end, for what it's worth, that it was not a filibustering technique. There was no time limit on the interview. We ended it after more than 2 hours. Instead, what you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not.
Sincere lies. Tucker Carlson is such an idiot. Such an snake oil salesman. First of all, Tucker Carlson, speaking of sincerity, is funny on its own. The biggest slimy piece of crap talking about of sincerity, and I'm supposed to believe it.
Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of Western Ukraine.
Western Ukraine? Why Western? Also, never mind.
So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks. And with that, here it is. Mr. President, thank you. On February 22nd, 2022, you addressed your country in a nationwide address when the...
Yeah, that was full of bullshit as well, and historical inaccuracy. That speech actually made me want to do history on the channel. Before that, okay, I'm gonna run you down my career path. First, I wanted to do animation content, only animation content. But then I discovered that making animation takes 100 years. So I couldn't just do animation as content. And then I decided I would do short animations together with video games. Short animations, video games. That's the ticket. That's what will bring me the thing. It'll allow me to play video games and do what I really like, drawing animation. So that's great. And then I added, I think, languages or something, maybe. And then Putin gave a speech. I was actually pretty, how do I put it? Not confident on speaking about history. Oh no. They call it Carl Parker. Be safe. And after hearing all the lies and nonsense from Vladimir Putin, I sort of decided that I maybe should do history. True. True. That is true. You're right. You're right, Moose Watcher. Russia should bully Kazakhstan.
Conflict in Ukraine started. And you said that you were acting because you had come to the conclusion that the United States, through NATO, might initiate a, quote, surprise attack on our country.
Wow, this reminds me of something. That reminds me when in 1968, I believe. I'm gonna double check it. Oh yeah, that reminds me of the little story when the USSR was really worried about the influence of NATO in Czechoslovakia and then invaded it, or I'm sorry, it didn't invade it. It conducted a special operation in 1968 through the Warsaw Pact in order not to let NATO take over Czechoslovakia. That sounds so familiar to the current invasion of Ukraine. And I wonder why. I wonder why. Oh yeah, because it was bullshit then and it's bullshit now. Go figure. There was no NATO threat then. There's no NATO threat now. Back then, Czechoslovakia wanted some democracy for itself. So the USSR decided to squash it through a special operation, quote unquote, using NATO as an excuse. And now, surprisingly, in 2014 and onward, Ukraine wanted some democracy for itself. And so, using its long tradition, Russia decided to squash it using NATO as an excuse. Thank you for listening to this talk.
And to American ears, that sounds paranoid. Tell us why you believe the United States might strike Russia out of the blue. How did you conclude that?
It's not that America, the United States, was going to launch a surprise strike on Russia. I didn't say that. Are we having a
Even I didn't say something that stupid. I'm gonna translate the translation. Even I didn't say something that stupid.
talk show or a serious conversation?
Here's the quote.
Jesus. That jump scare laugh just killed the audio.
Talk show or a
What was that? Why would you laugh like that during interview? What the hell was that? Jesus, I've never seen somebody just laugh like that during an interview. Hello, Maya Mayar.
serious conversation?
Here's
Wait, I'm gonna use this as a thumbnail. This is gonna be the thumbnail thing. There you go. This is gonna be the thumbnail face. Jesus. I'm gonna use it somehow. I don't know how, but I'm gonna use it somehow. Hello. I haven't seen this yet. Well then, brace yourself. It's gonna be something. Okay, what's the quote, Tucker?
Here's the quote. Thank you. It's a formidable series.
Because your basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
Basic history, I would say. I highly doubt that Tucker Carlson knows any history. At least when it comes to this region of the world. You sure Carlson isn't secretly like Russian nobility and he's paying respects to his Tsar? Maybe.
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
30 seconds to 1 minute. I heard he's gonna go like for 30 minutes about this crap.
Let's look where our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from?
This is going to be really stupid, isn't it? Especially since Ukraine as a nation is a fairly young concept. How do I know this? Because nations in general are young concepts, and Ukraine is no exception to that. Polish people as a modern nation are a pretty modern thing. Lithuanians, etc. So going back so far as to learn how Ukrainians as a nation identity started, that's already tells me all I need to know.
The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, and it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state.
That's bullshit. That's no. One moment more.
The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, and
Here's the quote. Thank you. It's a formidable
I'm gonna say something to that because it's really simple to.
series.
You only don't have a response to this if you're an idiot and don't know any history at all.
because your basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
Please. Ham.
Let's look where our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from? The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, And it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862.
That's bullshit. Because that was Kiev Rush. Rush. Rush is a separate word from Russia, Russia, okay? And there, it wasn't even Russia at that point. It was the Duchy of Moscow. And interestingly enough, Rush existed in Rush within the Great Duchy of Lithuania, and after that within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Rush existed as Rush still, okay? And then you had Russia, as a separate entity from Rush, okay? And Rush within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth considered itself a very, very separate entity from Russia, okay? So saying that Rush, and I'm using Polish sort of nomenclature here because English nomenclature is a little bit confused here. Because in English you have Kiev Rush and then you have Ruswania. But in Polish you have Kiev Rush and Rush. Okay? And then you have Rosja, which is Russia. Okay? So already, first sentence, first strike. First strike.
When
We're
the
gonna get a pushback from Tucker Carlson, whose basic education is in history. We're gonna get a thing.
townspeople of Novgorod invited a Varangian prince, Rurik, from Scandinavia to reign. In 1862, Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its
Rush.
statehood.
Not Russia. Rush.
And in Novgorod, there is a memorial dedicated to the 1000th anniversary of the country. In 882, Rurik's successor, Prince Oleg, who was actually playing the role of regent at Rurik's young son,
I actually heard that Poland is behind everything that's evil in history, so I want to hear that because that's gonna be fun. Poland is like the culprit of everything that's wrong with the world, apparently. So prepare yourselves.
because Rurik had died by that time, came to Kiev.
Kiev.
He ousted two brothers who apparently had once been members of Rurik's squad. So Russia began to develop with two centers of power, Kiev and Novgorod.
Rush. First of all, again, I will keep making the correction. And second of all, this all sounds so significant to the current conflict.
The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988.
Rush.
This was the baptism of Russia, when Prince Vladimir, the
Baptism of Rush. I'm sorry. Rush and Russia are different concepts.
great-grandson of Rurik, baptized Russia and adopted Orthodoxy, or Eastern Christianity. From this time, the centralized Russian state began to strengthen. Why? Because of the single territory, integrated economic ties, one and the same language, and, after the baptism of Russia, the same faith and rule of the prince. The centralized Russian state began to take shape.
What was the language, pray tell? What was the language?
Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to a throne. But after he passed away, it became complicated for various reasons.
This is alternative history. What if Alchest became Russian and became old? This is the future of what if Alchest. The end game of his content.
The throne was passed not directly from father to eldest son, but from the prince who had passed away to his brother, then to his sons in different lines. All this led to the fragmentation and the end of Rus as a single state.
Oh, now he said Rush. Now he said Rush. How wonderful. I guess he slipped up and said Rush instead of Russia. Wow. What a slip up to do. Interesting. Also, that fragmentation was not something special and specific to Rush. Like, that was not something specific to Rush. The Kingdom of Poland also had such fragmentization. It was called the District Division. The District Division of Poland. When Poland's king sort of gave Poland to his various children in equal proportions, and each one of them ruled his own little realm, and Poland became fragmented into separate districts or neighborhoods, if you will. So that sort of fragmentization was not so specific to Rus. It happened, it was a thing that happened in this region of the world.
There was nothing special about it. The
he even says that.
same was happening then in Europe.
Но раздробленное русское государство стало легкой добычей.
But the fragmented Russian state
He looks so dumbfounded, as if he's hearing about any of this for the first time in his entire life. Why is this guy even here doing the interview? Why is this guy even here? He looks so dumbfounded. Oh no. What? I've got a double chin? You're so mean to me.
It became an easy prey to the empire created earlier by Genghis Khan. His successors, namely Batu Khan, came to Rus, plundered and ruined nearly all the cities. The southern part, including Kiev, by the way, and some other cities, simply lost independence, while northern cities preserved some of their sovereignty. They had to pay tribute to the horde, but they managed to preserve some part of their sovereignty. And then a unified Russian state began to take shape with its center in Moscow. The southern part of Russian lands include
No, actually, the Duchy of Moscow was founded. Not a centralized Russian state. The Duchy of Moscow was founded.
including Kiev, began to gradually gravitate towards another magnet, the center that was emerging in Europe. This was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was even called the Lithuanian-Russian Duchy.
The Lithuanian Dutch and Russian... What? The Lithuanian Russian Duchy? Russian was not a word back then. There was no Russian back then. There was Rush only.
Because Russians were a significant part of this population.
There were no Russians there. There were Ruthenians. What the fuck? What do you mean Russians were the significant... What? Oh my god, this is so stupid that I cannot even... Ruthenians are not Russians. Yes, it is true that for the longest time the main language of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was Ruthenian. But Ruthenian and Russian are two different languages. And spoiler alert, Ruthenia and Russia are also two different places. And Ruthenians and Russians are two separate peoples. Jesus Christ, I don't even know. This is so crazy to me. This is so stupid. And I know what's coming. I know what's coming. Poland.
They spoke the old Russian language and
What do you mean the old Russian language? No, they spoke Ruthenian, which became Ukrainian.
were Orthodox. But then there was a unification, the union of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland.
Is he gonna call it an empire or something?
A few years later, another union was signed, but this time already in the religious sphere. Some of the Orthodox priests became subordinate to the Pope. Thus, these lands became part of the Polish-Lithuanian state.
Okay.
During decades, the Poles were engaged in Polonization of this part of the population.
That's not true, actually. That is... let's hear.
They introduced their language there, tried to entrench the idea that this population was not exactly Russians, that because they lived on the fringe, they were Ukrainians.
That's... no! What the fuck? No! That's absolutely not true! What? Oh, yeah, so... okay, it was the Polish people that created the idea of Ukrainians. Even though it wasn't an idea back then at all. The idea of Ukraine... oh, fuck me. Oh, Jesus. He's talking about the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Jesus Christ. No, that's not true at all. Oh. This is such... yes, exactly. Poland created the idea of Ukraine. It was Poland that said, yeah, you live on the fringe, so you're Ukrainians, not... you're not really Russian. And where do Belarusians, poor Belarusians come into this? There were Ruthenians as well. Ruthenians separated into two languages. Ukrainian and Belarusian. Where do poor Belarusians even come into this? How are they persuaded that they're Belarusian? Also, the idea of an Ukrainian identity was born after the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth already ended. Jesus. It's all Polish for... it's all Poland. Poland bad, just like Vosh.
Originally, the word Ukrainian meant that a person was living on the outskirts of the state, along the fringes, or was engaged in a border patrol service.
No. No, that's... no. What the... what? What do you mean outside of the state? What does that even mean?
It didn't mean any particular ethnic group. So the Poles were trying to, in
Those evil Poles.
every possible way, to colonize this part of the Russian lands, and
No, that's not how that worked. Actually, Ruthenian was given very free reign to exist within those lands. What happened was that people, in order to be able to participate in politics in any meaningful way, learned Polish. But everybody spoke Ruthenian at home, everybody spoke Ruthenian in every day. There was no Polonization in the sense that Russification happens. that forced people to speak Polish and tried to erase Lithuanian as a language. Well, it's sort of Lithuanian sort of split into two, Belarusian and Ukrainian.
Actually treated it rather harshly, not to say
No, it didn't. That's bullshit. Interestingly enough, Ukrainian historians say that it's bullshit, that there was no forced colonization of these lands. Okay?
cruelly. All that led to the fact that this part of the Russian lands began to struggle for their rights.
Писали
No. That is again, no. What the fuck? No, that's not correct.
письма. в
They wrote
Варшаву.
letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be observed and people be commissioned here, including to Kiev.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period? I'm losing track of where in history we are.
Это было-
The Polish
это
oppression
было
of
в 13
Ukraine.
веке.
Polish oppression. Oh my fucking. Oh. Oh my god. The Polish oppression of Ukraine. My head hurts. Okay.
Это было
It was in the
было в
13th century.
13-14 веке. Ну вот.
What do you mean in the 13th Wait. Am I... What the... What? Hold on. What the... What? Did I just hear this correctly? The 13th century begins in 1201 and ends in 1300. What the fuck? Okay, so he's speaking about the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the oppression of Ukraine by Polish people. And then he just said that he's talking about the 13th century.
Это было
It was in the
было в
13th century.
13-14.
The 13th century. It was in the 13th century. You know, the period of time between 1201 and 1300. Do you know when the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was formed? Don't look it up. Do you know when the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was formed? In 1569. I guess the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth existed and oppressed Russians before the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth even existed. Nice. Amazing. Of course, after that period of time. Jesus. Get your basic facts. Get your basic facts correct, at least. 1569. Oh, Jesus. The 13th century. God damn it. I can't. Jesus.
веке. Ну вот, в 13 веке. Это было в 13 веке. Значит, и
Now I will tell you what happened later.
So now it's the 14th century.
дальше и назову даты, чтобы не было путаницы.
And give the
И
dates so that there is no confusion.
В 1600
And in 1654, even a bit earlier,
чуть раньше даже, люди, которые контролировали власть,
In 1654, even earlier than the 13th century. How does he. What? Is he demented? What? 16.
people who were in control of the authority over that part of the Russian lands
чтобы присылали
I can't believe this. This is literally alternative history.
к ним
addressed Warsaw, I repeat, demanding that they send them to rulers of Russian origin and Orthodox faith. When Warsaw did not answer them, and in fact rejected their demands, they turned to Moscow, so that Moscow took them away.
чтобы вы не думали, что я что-то придумал, Дима.
So that you don't think that I'm inventing things.
This is such bullshit that I don't even know where to begin. I know what he's referencing. He's referencing Bogdan Khmelnytsky and his uprising of the Cossacks, which had nothing to do with any national. The Cossacks wanted to be equal to the nobles.
I'll give you these
Я вам
documents.
отдам вот эти документы.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're inventing it. I'm not sure why it's relevant to what happened.
I mean, you are inventing it. Aren't you supposed to know your history?
2 years
Не-не-не,
ago.
но все-таки
But still,
документы из архива.
these are documents from the archives, copies.
Здесь письма Богдана
Here are the letters from Bogdan Khmelnytsky,
контролировал власть в этой
the man who then controlled the power in this part of the Russian land.
Bogdan Khmelnytsky was a Cossack. The Cossacks wanted to be made equal to the nobles, and since the nobles didn't want to make them equal, they treated them as peasants, basically. They decided, well, then we'll just leave. That is what happened.
Lands
в Варшаву.
that is now called Ukraine.
А после того, как
He wrote to
получил
Warsaw
точно
demanding
писать
that their
письмо
rights be
в Москву
upheld.
с просьбой взять их.
And
What
after
does that mean, that their rights to be upheld?
being refused, he began to write letters to Moscow,
Which he regretted very quick, by the way.
asking to take them under the strong hand of the Moscow Tsar.
The strong hand of the Moscow Tsar.
There are copies of these documents. I will leave them for your good memory. There is a translation into Russian. You can translate it into English later.
Потому что
Russia would not agree to admit them straight away, assuming that the war with Poland would start. Nevertheless, in 1654,
With Poland? There was no Poland then. There was the Polish Lithuanian.
the Pan-Russian Assembly of top clergy and landowners, headed by the Tsar,
часть древнерусских земель вошла
which
Are we
was
going to mention the famous meeting between the Cossacks and the Tsar when the Cossacks said it is customary for the leader to swear allegiance to us as well as we to swear the allegiance to the leader, and the Tsar saying that's not how it works here, and the Cossacks immediately thinking to themselves, we've made a mistake? Is that part of the story going to be... Is this going to be part of this fascinating historical lecture?
the representative body of the power of the old Russian state, decided to include a part of the old Russian lands into Moscow Kingdom.
перемирие было.
He also wrote to Transylvanian fiefdom to ask support, by the way. He also, at one point, went to the Ottoman Empire, just saying. So I guess that part of the world is Turkish in reality. I guess they're Turkish. It's not a Cossack tradition. It's how it worked in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The king in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth basically had no power, so he swore allegiance to the subjects, as well as the subjects swore allegiance to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth king. That is what they were referring to. When we were in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the king swore allegiance to us. So aren't you gonna do the same? And the Tsar said, that's not how we do things here. One would suggest that it should be either Romanians or Hungarians in the what is today Ukraine. They're Turkish, true. Like, come on. This is so silly. This is what if alt hist tier.
As expected, the war with Poland began. It lasted 13 years and then
The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Another correction that I have to make. Just as I have to say that it wasn't Russia, but it was Russia. I'm going to use the Polish nomenclature for now. It wasn't Russia, it was Ruś. It wasn't Poland, it was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. If you're not precise with these terms, we end up with quasi-history like this. And how is that even relative? How is any of this significant to the current invasion? I still keep sort of, even if all of this was true, okay? Even if we granted that it was Russia from the start, it was Russian lands, it was Russia, Russians, Russians, but they don't identify as Russian anymore. And that's it. That would be it. Self-determination. Even if all of this wasn't bullshit, which it is, it wouldn't mean anything to the current conflict. So not only is this pointless, it's also historical bullshit. So it's hurtful on two fronts, because national identities are a modern thing, okay? So if a new Ukrainian national identity emerged and decided we're not part of Russia, then it's not. No matter what bullshit history narrative you spin, it's just not. And that's it. But the history presented here is bullshit, which also helps the case.
1954, a truce was
1954? We've jumped quite a bit, haven't we?
concluded. And 32 years later, I think, a peace treaty with Poland,
You think?
which they called Eternal Peace, was signed. And these lands, the whole left bank of Dnieper, including Kiev, went to Russia. And the whole right bank of Dnieper remained in Poland. Under the rule of Catherine the Great, Russia reclaimed all of its historical lands.
Yeah, it took part in partitions of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Reclaimed all of its historical... Jesus. Also, that's actually bullshit as well. Even from Russia's perspective, this is bullshit. Because, believe it or not, Catherine the Great did not want to reclaim the historical lands, which is a very inconvenient thing to Putin's rhetoric. She actually didn't want to do that. She wanted the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in its intact borders to be a vassal state to Russia. But Prussia really wanted pieces of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth because it was small. And so it's sort of, I'm giving you a very abridged version of history. Russia at the time was giving the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth sort of a guarantee of integrity of its borders. And Prussia managed to, long story short, persuade certain nobles to reject that sort of guarantee, which gave Prussia sort of a way in to enter a partitioning situation and pressured Catherine the Great to actually do it. She didn't want a partition. She wanted the whole of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth to be under the sort of jurisdiction of Russia. So she didn't even want to reclaim the historical lands, quote unquote. So there you go. We're learning some things.
including in the south and west.
Да, а вот
This all lasted until the revolution. Before World War I,
Украинизации
Austrian General Staff relied on the ideas of Ukrainianization and started actively promoting the ideas of Ukraine and the Ukrainianization.
That's what? I'm sorry, who?
Ideas of World War I,
украинизации
Austrian General Staff relied on the idea
The Austrian-Hungarian Empire, you say? Do you mean the Austrian-Hungarian Empire that when Ukrainians said they wanted their independence, the newly formed Ukrainian nation argued with the newly formed Polish nation which land should belong to which country? The Austrian-Hungary Empire shrugged their hands and said, look, this is a Polish internal problem. Is that the Ukrainization that you're talking about? Calling Ukrainian-Polish disputes a Polish internal affair? Hello, Straw Hat Monty. Like, is this really happening? Is that what we call Ukrainification? Cynically calling a conflict between two nations a Polish internal affair?
ideas of Ukrainianization and started actively promoting the ideas of Ukraine and the Ukrainianization.
в преддверии мировой войны, конечно, было стремление ослабить потенциал.
Their motive was obvious.
Было стремление
Just before
Before World War One.
World War I,
So like the beginning of, the 20th century.
they wanted to weaken the potential enemy and secure themselves favorable conditions in the border area. So the idea which had emerged in Poland that people residing in that territory were allegedly not really Russians, but rather belonged to a special ethnic group, Ukrainians, started being propagated by the Austrian General Staff.
которые
No, that's bullshit as well. Well, no, apparently Poland invented the Ukraine already as the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth.
говорили необходимо
As far back as the 19th century, theorists calling for Ukrainian independence appeared.
Yeah.
бы Украина
So he's talking about like the beginning of the 20th century, right before the First World War.
украинской независимости говорили.
All those, however, claimed that Ukraine should have a very good relationship with Russia.
Настаивают. Вот.
They insisted on that.
После революции 1917 года
After the 1917 revolution,
старались восстановить.
He looks so helpless here. Why is he even doing here? Like, what is he even doing here? Like, he can just fill his head with bullshit and he just sits here like a muppet and listens with a pained expression.
Государственность развернулась гражданская.
the Bolsheviks sought to restore the statehood and the civil war began, including the hostilities with Poland.
В Польше в 1921 году.
Yeah, of course he is wrong. Of course it's wrong.
По которым западные
In 1921, peace with Poland was proclaimed, and under that treaty, the
Oh, how did that happen? What happened? And why did you omit the formation of the Ukrainian People's Republic? Why did you omit the Polish-Ukrainian War? He does.
right bank of Dnieper
Sometimes he laughs.
River once again was given
Right.
back to Poland.
В 1900
It was not given back to Poland. It was... That is such butchering of history that it's incredible. It's incredible. Only Tucker Carlson could listen to this and actually believe it. Because he's an idiot and doesn't know anything. A high schooler from Poland could be a better interviewer of Putin than this guy. All you had to do is finish high school in Poland to have a better grasp on history than Tucker Carlson. What do you mean? Oh, God. This is so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing that a Polish high schooler would be better equipped to push Putin on this. Using the force on Carlson. You will listen to my... You love to listen about my alternative history.
1939
In 1939, after Poland
Oh, we've already jumped into the end of World War II. How nice.
cooperated with Hitler,
сотрудничала с Гитлером, а Польша сотрудничала.
it did collaborate with Hitler, you know? Hitler offered Poland peace and a treaty of friendship.
В архивах есть
Wait,
You
sorry,
know,
what?
Hitler offered
Гитлером, а
I'm
Польша
sorry, what? What date are we in? 1949?
it did collaborate with Hitler, you know?
What the
Hitler,
сотрудничала. В 1939
once again, was given back
39.
to Poland.
в 1939
In 1939, after
1939, the beginning of World War II.
Poland cooperated with Hitler,
сотрудничала
In 1939, Poland cooperated with Hitler. By what? By being invaded? Okay. In 1939, Poland cooperated with Hitler. That is definitely news to me.
с Гитлером, а Польша сотрудничала.
it did collaborate with Hitler, you know?
I don't know. Tell us more. Jesus Christ.
И
Hitler offered Poland
предлагал,
peace and a treaty of friendship.
в архивах есть, предлагал
And therefore Poland cooperated because Hitler offered stuff?
An alliance demanding in return that Poland give back to Germany the so-called Danzig corridor, which connected the bulk of Germany with East Prussia and Königsberg.
основную часть Германии с Кёнигсбергом.
How is that Poland cooperating with Nazi Germany? Germany basically giving demands to Poland. You must allow the free city of Danzig to become German. You have to allow a neutral highway to go through your territory. How is that Poland cooperating? Poland refused those demands. So how is that cooperation exactly? Cooperation is when a different country demands things of you and you say no? Is that the definition of cooperation now?
Да. И с Восточной Пруссией
After World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Gdansk emerged.
No! What the fuck? No! That's not true at all. Before World War II, Danzig, or Gdańsk, if you will, was a free city. It was not part of Poland at all. It was a free city. It was literally a free city. This is...
и вместо
Jesus Christ. You have to be so illiterate to believe in any of this. Like, you have to depend on so much illiteracy. The Free City of Danzig was a city-state under the protection and oversight of the League of Nations between 1920 and 1939, consisting of the Baltic seaport of Danzig and nearly 200 other small localities in the surrounding areas. The polity was created on the 15th November 1920 in accordance with the terms of Article 100. If you don't know that Gdańsk or Danzig or whatever was a free city before World War II, then you really, really should not be interviewing a bullshit artist about history. So let's listen to this again.
Данцига
And instead of that,
с Восточной Пруссией.
after World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Gdansk emerged.
So there you go. This whole history lecture is worth as much as saying that Danzig was transferred to Poland after World War I and became Gdańsk. Oh yes, the majority German population city was so transferred to Poland.
И вместо Данцига появился.
Hitler asked them to give it amicably, but they refused.
Because it wasn't in their power to do so even. It wasn't a Polish city, it was a free city. They asked Poland for the access to the city. But they couldn't give it, it was a free city.
Of course.
Still, they collaborated with Hitler and engaged together.
So they refused. Let me get this straight. Hitler demanded things of Poland, Poland refused, but somehow they still collaborated.
In the partitioning of Czechoslovakia.
That was in 1938, and they didn't partition it. Oh, God. I highly recommend reading Günter Grass on Danzig. How long was Danzig a free city? Between 1920 and 1939. 20 years about? A German writer. Are there any particular books that I can get on it from this author? Like, we might as well turn it into a positive, constructive enterprise, right? So he wrote a lot about Danzig. He could describe perfectly the multicultural nature of this pre-World War city, which he always felt a nostalgia for. Yeah. I mean, true. Like, World War II screwed up a lot of things. Let's be honest. So what book could I read from this author? What books? Okay. So he was part of the SS, but not of his own will, from what I'm seeing here. Oh, thank you, Moose Watcher. Let's see. Well, we have a whole book. On the way from Germany to Germany. Oh, this is interesting. During the peeling of an onion, autobiography, novel. It begins with the end of his childhood in Danzig and the beginning of World War II. This is interesting. Oh no, you have not missed it. We're still in the middle of it. Meeting in Tangle. I have to get some of his books. I'm ashamed that I actually not heard of this author before. No, I have. Wait, that's not true. That's not. I've heard of this book. I've heard of the. No, I know this book. I know this book. This is a very famous book. So yeah, I just didn't connect it with the author. The Tim Drum is a very famous book. Yeah, this is a famous. So yeah, this is well known. You know, there is actually a free city of Danzig government in exile which continues to exert that they were left out of the negotiation after World War II, etc. Someone said it essentially a far right org as opposed to a proper government. Okay, so I definitely know this book. Yeah, probably I do. Yeah, this is very famous. I want to read something from him about Danzig. So I might. I have to actually look through the library and see what I have, because it would be really embarrassing if I buy a book and it just turns out that I have a copy at home already, you know? That would be very, like, embarrassing, you know? So I actually have to look through. It'll take a while, but you know, I'm a pretty. Oh no, I can't tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Vietnamese New Year. Which I'm going to stream, maybe. We'll see. Should I stream the Vietnamese New Year? It's gonna be so cool. I just cannot wait. Oh. Tucker Carlson has absorbed me so much with his brilliance and what an interview. God. I'm pretty? That's not true. Did you just call me pretty? Was this a mistake? To be fair, Tucker tried to get some pertinent questions, but Putin was lying in circles around him. I don't believe that. I'm sorry, Dexmex. I don't believe that Tucker tried to do anything. There are so many people that could do a better job with the interview. A high schooler from Poland could do a better job, not to mention people that actually like dedicate their lives to doing real good journalism, you know? To actually trying to hone their craft, to actually trying to be objective, to actually try to, how to say, get to the truth, you know? Which is, at least on paper, what a journalist is supposed to do, to get to the truth, right? Not this.
May I ask you, you're making the case that Ukraine, certainly parts of Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine, is in effect Russia has been for hundreds of years. Why wouldn't you just take it when you became president 24 years ago? You have nuclear weapons, they don't. If it's actually your land, why did you wait so long?
I'll tell you. I'm coming to that. This briefing.
What the fuck? This is the question that you're gonna ask? Why didn't you do the horrible invasion before? Are you serious? Is this supposed to be an example of the pertinent questions that Tucker Carlson tried asking? Why didn't you just take what's yours earlier? I mean, I'm probably gonna be able to return on time to stream, but it's like my Vietnamese family.
Thing is coming to an end. It might be boring, but it
It's not
explains
boring.
many things.
I just don't know how it's relevant.
Ну, отлично. Тогда мне очень
Good.
приятно, что вы так это оценили.
Good.
Спасибо большое.
I'm so
Итак,
gratified that you
Good, good. I'm so I'm so gratified that you're such an idiot and just eat up whatever I tell you. This gratifies me greatly.
appreciate that.
После,
Thank you.
I appreciate your lack of knowledge on anything. Thank you. If I actually had a person sitting in that chair that actually knew anything, then I might be in trouble. But thank you. You're here. Thank you. You've got the clout and you've got no knowledge to back it up. Thank you. You're a really, in this part of the world, we call people like you useful idiot. You look so giddy here. So sad. What a giddy look. Oh, did I do well, Daddy? Am I doing well? Do you approve?
You.
перед Второй мировой
So,
войной,
before
когда
World
Польша
War II,
сотрудничала с
Poland
Германией,
collaborated with
оказалось,
Hitler,
что требования
and
How? You haven't even established. How did Poland collaborate with Hitler before World War II? You have not established that.
although it did not yield to Hitler's demands, it still participated in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia together with Hitler,
That's not what happened.
as the Poles had not given the Danzig corridor to Germany and went too far, pushing Hitler to
It sort of is what happened, but it's not what happened. I'm gonna tell you that I'm not going to go into the Czechoslovakia thing. And yes, Poland did a bad thing, but it did not do it in coordination with Nazi Germany. That is 100% what I can tell you. That Poland did not do the Czechoslovakia thing in any sort of coordination with Nazi Germany. Along with what I felt his.
start World War II by attacking them. Why was it Poland against whom the war started on 1st September 1939?
Maybe because Germany's main goals were related to the East? That could be a clue as to why Poland was attacked. The main maybe you should read a book called there are millions of books about this. Read a book, Vladimir Putin. To try to figure it out, you'd have to know anything. You cannot go to an interview not knowing anything and expect the person that you interview to feed you correct and information. Because the answer to this asinine question is very simple. Oh, why didn't you invite before? Because we didn't feel the time was right. There you go. That's the answer. We just didn't feel the time was right. And later we felt the time was right. So what now? What could Tucker Carlson even respond to that if Putin simply said, we felt the time wasn't right yet to reclaim our lands. And later we felt it was. That's it. So it wasn't as smart a question as you might believe, Dexmax.
Poland turned out to be uncompromising, and Hitler had nothing to do but start implementing his plans with Poland. By the way, the USSR, I have read some archive documents, behaved behaved very
свои
honestly.
войска
by signing the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact.
на помощь Чехословакии.
It asked Poland's permission to transit its troops through the Polish territory to help Czechoslovakia.
Было сказано, что если
Yeah, that was very honest of the USSR. The USSR, which tried to invade and conquer Poland before, the Vistula miracle 1921-ish, and then asked to be able to put its forces inside of Poland, which Poland knew that they would definitely not leave. And can I just remind you about the special Polish operation in the 30s in the USSR when the USSR killed about 200,000 Polish people? Was Poland supposed to trust the USSR after that, after the special Polish operation? Was that supposed to be a thing that happened after killing 200,000 Polish people in the USSR? Just trust us to march our troops into your territory? Was that the plan?
даже Советский
It's
But-
very honest.
The then Polish foreign minister said that if the Soviet planes flew over Poland, they would be downed over the territory of Poland.
война началась,
But that
и
doesn't
теперь
matter.
уже сама
What matters
Польша
is that the
стала
war
жертвой
began,
той
and
политики,
Poland
которую
fell prey to the
проводила наша
policies it
Потому
had
что,
pursued against Czechoslovakia, as under the well-known Molotov-Ribbentrop
часть
Pact.
этих территорий отошла
Part of the territory, including western Ukraine, was to be given to Russia.
под названием Советский
Thus,
Союз,
Russia,
вернулась
which was
таким
then
образом.
named the USSR, regained its historical lands.
How was Vilnius of Lithuania part of Russia's historical lands? Can you explain that one to me, please, Vladimir Putin?
Победа в
After the
Великой
victory in the Great Patriotic War, as we call World War
Все
II,
эти территории окончательно были
all
закреплены.
those territories were ultimately enshrined as belonging to Russia,
Польша
to the USSR.
при этой компенсации, так надо полагать,
As for
получила
Poland,
западные,
it received, apparently in compensation, the
Apparently.
lands which had originally been German.
это, вот
But Lviv, for example, was Polish, so how do you square that circle? That Lviv had a majority Polish population and the USSR just deported all the Polish people out of Lviv. How do you explain that? How do you
Запад
explain that the Vilnius was a majority Polish city and also that the USSR expelled, threw out
да, восточную часть
The eastern parts of Germany,
часть земли.
these are now western lands of Poland.
Польша сегодня. Ну, естественно, и опять вернули.
Of course, Poland regained access to the Baltic Sea and
Опять
Danzig,
вернули Данциг, который опять стал называться.
which was once again given its Polish name.
because Danzig after the war was not majority German anymore.
Вот таким образом сложилось.
So this was how this situation
При
developed.
формировании Советского Союза, это уже 1900
In
What? Tucker Carlson doesn't even know World War II history now?
1922, when the USSR was being established,
большевики начали формировать СССР.
I like how he skirted through the whole Holodomor business. I like that. I like how he just skirted through the whole Holodomor thing. I just love it. Love it. Love it hardcore. Okay, so what people have to understand that settlement structures of various people were not like in Civilization or computer strategy game. Yes. Thank you. Especially since those nation states emerged from multinational, multicultural countries. So the settlement structures were very complicated and they led to very complicated territorial disputes between the newly formed nation states. you know? Because there were mixed people living all over the place, as in people of various ethnical or national backgrounds. So it was complicated, you know? People lived all over the place of various nationalities because there was no such thing before the emergence of the nation state. So people just lived all over the place in Europe. You had Germans basically everywhere. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you had many cities when you heard a whole mosaic of languages on the street when you were. Like there were cities when you heard Lithuanian, Polish, German, Yiddish. It was all like, you know, no, it was normal to hear many different languages when you were out on the town. Oh yeah, the German Empire did dispatch Lenin. That's true. That's actually true. So in Hungary, Buda Castle at one point was dominantly German speakers. Had been an important part of Hungarian kingdom as one of the central. Yeah, like this is what happens when you try once again to take a nation state concept and to sort of do this projection into the past and try to pretend that everything was always neatly divided into nations that just naturally led to nation states and it was all good. Like as if all the ethnic cleansings that happened due to the formation of nation states did not happen. You know? Oh, you lived here for what? You lived here for hundreds of years? Well, you're foreigners now because you're part of that other nation now because they formed and we decided that you're actually not part of this country anymore. You're part of that other nation that just formed somewhere else. So we have to kick you out, which is what happened all over Europe, by the way. Jesus. What to even say here? Not to even mention that none of it is relevant to the current war in Ukraine. None of it. So we can nitpick the history and the misunderstanding of basic concepts of nationality, how it formed, and how, as Karasu said, that the settlement structure of various peoples were pretty complicated. We can talk about all that, and it is interesting, but it ultimately has nothing to do with the current war. Nothing.
Bolsheviks started building the USSR and established the Soviet Ukraine, which had never existed before.
Right.
What? Is he trying to... Where? Is he trying to say that the Soviet Ukraine was established after World War II?
Ukraine, which had... The Bolsheviks started building when the USSR was being established.
Oh, when it was being established. I guess the Ukrainians People's Republic is just gonna be skirted over. That was nothing. The Polish-Ukrainian War totally did not happen, and the taking over of the People's Ukrainian Republic was totally not a thing. And the book that I have here somewhere about it is totally false. Sure. Mm-hmm.
The Bolsheviks started building the USSR and established the Soviet Ukraine, which had never existed before.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I can agree with... This is the first thing that I'm going to agree with, okay? Soviet Ukraine did not exist ever before the formation of the Soviet Union. You're right. Before the Soviet Union, no Soviet Ukraine existed ever before. Correct. The first correct statement of this whole interview. Thank you. But it's irrelevant because Ukraine existed.
Stalin insisted that those republics be included in the USSR as autonomous entities. For some inexplicable reason, Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, insisted that they be entitled to withdraw from the USSR.
наделил
And
образующуюся
again, for some unknown reasons, he transferred to that newly established Soviet Republic of Ukraine some of the lands together with people living there, even though those lands had never been called Ukraine, and yet they were made part of that Soviet Republic of Ukraine. Those lands included the Black Sea region, which was received under Catherine the Great, and which had no historical connection with Ukraine whatsoever.
Well, Crimea, for that matter, was just conquered and subjugated, so it also has no real historical ties to Russia. No. Tucker Carlson speaks English. He has a translator. So the answer is no.
Even if we go as far back as 1654, when these lands returned to Russian Empire, that territory was the size of 3 to 4 regions of modern Ukraine, with no Black Sea region. That was completely out of the
In
question.
1654.
Exactly.
You obviously have encyclopedic knowledge of this region, but why didn't you make this case?
No, he doesn't. He does not have an encyclopedic knowledge of this region. Yes, Crimea was an independent place for a long time, and very multicultural as well, for that matter. And there are many different peoples living in Crimea as well, of course. Tatars among them, but there were many other peoples that lived in Crimea, which, of course, once Russia dominated Crimea, it, of course, did what it does best, which is ethnic cleansing of various peoples of Crimea. The Greeks were taken to Mariupol, interesting enough. Yeah, they're live interpreters. Yeah, he does have an encyclopedic knowledge of his fan fiction. This is...
For the first 22 years as president that
Well, ethnic cleansing is not necessarily genocide, but...
Ukraine wasn't a real country.
Да. Итак, значит, Советская Украина получила
The Soviet Union was given a great deal of territory that had never belonged to it, including the Black Sea region.
когда Россия их получила в результате
At some point, when Russia received them as an outcome of the Russo-Turkish Wars,
Белоруссии.
they were called New Russia or Novorossiya.
Ленин основатель
But that does not matter. What matters is that
It sort of matters a great deal if you're trying to say that Crimea is historically Russian, don't you think? You just said it. You said that there is no historical link to these lands.
Lenin, the founder
I mean, they have earpieces. Like, he has an earpiece. And the earpiece probably feeds him the translation.
of the Soviet state
И вот это все
established Ukraine that way.
десятилетия в составе СССР
For decades, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic developed as part of the USSR,
по непонятным причинам занимались
and for unknown
Yeah.
reasons again,
Probably, yeah.
the Bolsheviks were engaged in Ukrainianization. It was not merely because the Soviet
Okay, I have
leadership
to
was
listen to this again.
причинам занимались
Soviet Republic, the Ukraine that way.
десятилетия в составе СССР
For decades, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic developed as part of the USSR,
по непонятным причинам занимались
and for unknown reasons again, the Bolsheviks were engaged in Ukrainianization.
No, that's bullshit again. We're gonna scare it again. We're gonna ignore the Ukrainian hunger of the 20s because of the war economy. We're gonna ignore that. Like, Lenin did sort of like a lessening of the policy against Ukraine, allowing Ukrainian sort of culture to flourish for a little bit. But that was because Ukrainians were basically starved. Because as it turns out, the Holodomor was not the only time when the USSR decided that the Ukrainian people need to starve. That all started in the 20s with the USSR war economy. So the whole loosening of policy by Lenin is what Putin calls here Ukrainification, which is just read a book, any book, by a proper historian, not by a Putin historian.
It was not merely because the Soviet leadership was composed to a great extent of those originating from Ukraine. Rather, it was explained by the general policy of indigenization pursued by the Soviet Union. Same things were done in other Soviet republics. This involved promoting national languages and national cultures, which is not a bad in principle. That is how the Soviet Ukraine was created. After the World War II, Ukraine received, in addition to the lands that had belonged to Poland before the war, part of the lands that had previously...
Ukrainians wanted independence during the partitions, okay? They wanted already independence during the partitions, just like Polish people. Like, are we gonna really ignore that? That Polish people and Ukrainians bickered over which territory should go to which nation during the partition period? How is Soviet Ukraine forming relevant to the Ukrainian national claim at all? It's not. The answer is it's not. It's just irrelevant.
belonged to Hungary and Romania. So Romania and Hungary had some of their lands taken away and given to the Soviet Ukraine, and they still remain part of Ukraine. So in this sense, we have every reason to affirm that Ukraine is an
I think it
artificial...
makes me so angry that I forget to take my hormones or something. Whatever. Hormones taken.
state that was shaped at Stalin's will.
Do you believe Hungary has a right to take its land back from Ukraine and that other nations have a right to go back to their 1654 borders?
1654. Well, you'd have to agree to a re-establishment of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. So that's not really a good. Question for Putin. Let me see. 1654, huh? 1654. Oof. How did it look? How did the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth look like in 1964? Let's see. Oh! You know what? Yeah, let's all go back to the borders from 1964. I agree. Well, yeah, let's do that. Sure.
I'm not sure whether they should go back to the 1654 borders.
Russia would not be happy with the 1964 borders. I can tell you that for sure. I'm not sure.